Ladies and gentlemen, today I want you to open your eyes. I want you to feel the energy in your bones, because what we are talking about is not just history, not just politics, not just power, but destiny. We are talking about a nation that has risen from centuries of struggle, from humiliation, from poverty, from being underestimated. And now it stands on the world stage with a presence so strong, so undeniable, that every major power must stop, must look, must pay attention. That nation is India, and today the world fears India not because fear is about aggression or violence, but because fear comes when you recognize unstoppable strength, unstoppable determination, and an unstoppable will to succeed. Do you understand what it means when 1 billion people decide they will never again be ignored? Do you know what it means when a country that once was written off as a land of poverty, chaos, and division becomes the hub of innovation, technology, military power, and cultural influence? That is what we are witnessing, and the truth is simple. The fear is not hatred, the fear is respect. Respect born out of the realization that India is no longer the India of yesterday. It is not the India that bowed to foreign rulers. It is not the India that begged for recognition. This is the India that takes its seat at the table and says, "We belong here, and we are here to stay." Think about the journey. Centuries of colonization tried to break the spirit of this nation. They stripped its wealth, its pride, its dignity. They thought India would never rise again. They thought the chains would last forever. But what happens when you push people to the ground? You only make them stronger. You only make them more determined to rise, and when India broke free, it was not just freedom from chains, it was the beginning of a new era. The phoenix rose from the ashes, and it has been growing stronger every single day since then. Look at the numbers, look at the scale, a nation of over 1 billion people, with a young population that is ambitious, educated, and hungry for success. They are not waiting for someone to hand them opportunities. They are creating them. They are building businesses that compete on a global level. They are writing the code that runs the world's biggest companies. They are designing rockets that reach the moon and Mars. They are building weapons that ensure sovereignty will never again be questioned, and they are doing it with discipline, with vision, with a fire in their hearts that you cannot put out. The fear is not of India's size. The fear is of India's determination. Because when 1 billion people believe in their destiny, the world has no choice but to adapt. Do you see how fast India is moving? It is not crawling. It is not walking. It is sprinting. Economically, militarily, technologically, culturally, India is charging forward, and the world powers are realizing that they cannot ignore it anymore. They cannot dictate terms. They cannot treat India as a secondary player. That time is gone, that era is over, but let's talk about fear. Why does everyone fear India now? Fear comes when you realize that someone will no longer be controlled. Fear comes when you see a nation that refuses to back down. India is not afraid of sanctions. India is not afraid of threats. India is not afraid of pressure. When told to cut off energy supplies, India says, "We will buy what we need from whom we want, because our people come first." When told to choose sides in global conflicts, India says, "We are not your pawn. We are not here to fight your battles. We are here to protect our own interests, and we will stand with dignity." That confidence, that unapologetic sovereignty, that is what the world fears. The military strength of India is not just about numbers, it is about the willpower behind it. It is about knowing that every soldier standing at the border is not just protecting territory, but carrying the weight of 0 years of civilization, carrying the duty of 1 billion people who stand united. The weapons, the technology, the nuclear arsenal, these are not toys. These are shields of independence. They are signals to the world: we will not be dictated to, we will not be invaded, we will not be humiliated again. And what about technology? Nations fear not because India copies, but because India creates. Look at the space program. While other nations spend billions to land on the moon, India does it with efficiency, with discipline, with focus, and shocks the entire world. While others doubt, India proves. That is the real fear, that a nation once called developing is now setting standards, setting records, leading innovation. But do not make the mistake of thinking that fear only comes from military or economic power. No, the real fear, the real respect, comes from culture, from identity, from values. India has shown the world that it will modernize without losing its soul. It will adopt technology without giving up its traditions. It will become a superpower while still chanting its prayers, while still respecting its elders, while still holding on to the roots that make it unique. And that balance, that ability to grow without forgetting who you are, that is what shakes the world. Because other nations lost their identity in the pursuit of power, but India holds its identity like a sword, sharp and unbreakable. Now listen to me, fear is not about domination, fear is about acknowledgement. When nations negotiate, they know that without India at the table, there is no deal. When corporations plan their future, they know without India's talent, there is no innovation. When global leaders think about security, they know without India's partnership, there is no stability. And that is the fear of irrelevance without India's involvement. This is not a story of arrogance, this is a story of confidence, this is a story of a people who said, enough is enough, we will decide our future, we will write our destiny, we will not be ignored. And let me tell you, once that fire is lit, there is no going back. India is not going back. India is going forward, full speed, unstoppable. So I ask you, do you see the writing on the wall? Do you understand why India is the nation everyone fears now? Because fear is not always negative. Fear means respect. Fear means acknowledgement. Fear means the world knows this. India is not just participating in history, it is shaping it. From the villages where farmers wake up before the sun to feed the nation, to the cities where engineers design the next big invention, to the borders where soldiers stand tall in the cold and the heat, to the classrooms where children dream bigger than ever before, this nation is alive, awake, and moving. It is a giant that has risen and no one can put it back to sleep. India has faced poverty, India has faced division, India has faced corruption, challenges, wars, disasters, but India has never broken. And that unbreakable spirit is what the world fears most, because you can fight armies, you can fight governments, but you cannot fight spirit, and India's spirit is now burning brighter than ever. This is the reality. This is the truth. India has arrived, and the world knows India's assertion of sovereignty is not just a statement, it is a force, a declaration that echoes across continents, a truth that the world can no longer deny. For centuries, the narrative around India was written by others, dictated by foreign rulers, manipulated by outside powers, twisted to suit the agendas of empires that saw India not as a nation, but as a resource to be exploited. Yet the irony of history is this: the very land that was once subjugated is today the land that stands tall, unapologetic in its existence, confident in its capabilities, and unshakable in its destiny. To understand this transformation, you must look not only at India's political power or its economic might, but at its spirit, the deep, unbreakable core of its civilization, which has carried it through centuries of storms only to emerge stronger each time. When we talk about sovereignty, we are not only speaking of borders or flags, we are speaking of a mindset, a posture, a way of being that says, we will decide our own path. India is embodying this posture in a way that unsettles those who are used to controlling the global order. Nations that once dictated terms to India now face a country that refuses to bend. A country that calculates its choices based on its own interests and not on the expectations of others. Sovereignty here is not arrogance. It is the natural evolution of a civilization that has endured everything, absorbed everything, and still retained its essence. This sovereignty is unapologetic because India no longer feels the need to justify its choices to those who question it. Whether it is buying energy from one source, trading with another, or shaping alliances that reflect its vision, India makes decisions as an independent power, not as a follower. Confidence is the fuel that drives this sovereignty. A nation does not rise by accident, it rises when its people believe in themselves, when they shed the weight of inferiority and recognize their worth. India's confidence is not superficial, it comes from achievements that speak louder than any speeches. It comes from a growing economy that defies global slowdowns, from technological innovations that rival the best in the world, from a space program that shocks experts with its efficiency, from a military that defends its borders with strength and modern capability, and from a culture that inspires billions beyond its borders. When you stand on that foundation, you do not need to bow, you do not need to apologize, you stand firm, you stand tall, unshakable. This is perhaps the most powerful dimension of India's sovereignty. Because every nation faces pressure, every rising power faces attempts to contain it, distract it, weaken it. Yet India has demonstrated that no amount of external pressure will derail its journey. When foreign governments threaten sanctions, India finds alternative paths. When powerful blocs attempt to isolate it, India builds new partnerships. When others try to draw it into conflicts that do not serve its interests, India calmly refuses, charting its own independent course. This is what makes the world uneasy. India cannot be controlled, it cannot be manipulated, it cannot be boxed into someone else's narrative. Its sovereignty is not negotiable, not temporary, not conditional. It is absolute. Look at the global stage today. Trade wars, shifting alliances, conflicts that consume regions. Amid all this chaos, India's voice is distinct. It is a voice that says, we will engage, but we will not submit. When asked to choose sides in rivalries, India refuses the binary. When told to abandon its partnerships, India refuses the ultimatum. When pressured to align with strategies that serve others but not its own people, India says no, and that no carries weight because it is backed by strength, by growth, by resilience. The world is forced to listen because ignoring India is no longer an option. But sovereignty is not only about politics, it is also about identity. India's sovereignty is visible in its refusal to abandon its traditions while modernizing at an unprecedented pace. In a global culture where many nations trade their roots for short-term acceptance, India holds firmly to its ancient philosophies, its languages, its spiritual depth, even as it produces world-class scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, and thinkers. This balance between ancient and modern, between tradition and innovation, is sovereignty of the highest form. It says, we will define progress on our terms. We will embrace technology, but we will not erase who we are. We will join the world, but we will not lose ourselves. This terrifies those who thought modernization meant uniformity, because India proves you can be modern and still be unique. You can be global and still be rooted. Economically, sovereignty means independence in decision-making. India no longer waits for aid, it no longer pleads for recognition, it builds, it invests, it innovates, it creates policies that prioritize its own people, even if they displease powerful nations. Energy security is one example. While others demanded compliance with their sanctions, India calculated its needs and pursued deals that ensured its citizens would not suffer. This was not defiance for the sake of defiance. This was sovereignty in action, choosing the path that best serves the nation, regardless of external pressure. And this is exactly why India is feared, because it does not need permission to protect its interests. Militarily, sovereignty means deterrence. For decades, India faced existential threats from multiple fronts. It learned the hard way that sovereignty must be defended with strength, not with hope. Today, India possesses one of the most powerful armed forces in the world, supported by nuclear capability, advanced technology, and a defense industry that increasingly focuses on self-reliance. The message is clear: sovereignty is not given, it is protected. Every soldier standing on the borders is a living declaration of this sovereignty, saying to the world that this land, this people, this nation cannot and will not be compromised. Diplomatically, sovereignty is visible in how India positions itself. It does not lecture the world, but it also does not accept lectures. It listens, but it speaks with authority. It engages in global organizations not as a passive participant, but as a voice that demands respect. Whether it is climate negotiations, trade deals, or global security forums, India ensures its interests are protected. Sovereignty in diplomacy means never allowing another nation to speak on your behalf. And India has mastered this art. It speaks for itself, and increasingly, it speaks for others who admire its independence. Culturally, sovereignty means owning your narrative. For centuries, India's story was told by outsiders who painted it as exotic, chaotic, or weak. Today, India is telling its own story. Through cinema, literature, technology, spirituality, and global influence, India projects an image of pride and power. Its diaspora around the world carries this identity with confidence, no longer hiding their heritage but celebrating it. This cultural sovereignty reinforces the political and economic sovereignty, creating a complete picture of a nation that knows exactly who it is and what it stands for. This unapologetic assertion of sovereignty unsettles those who are used to compliance. The world is built on power structures where certain nations expect obedience, where certain rules are designed to maintain dominance. India is challenging that order, not with reckless rebellion, but with calm, steady, unshakable independence. It does not seek conflict, but it will not avoid it if forced. It does not desire domination, but it refuses subordination. This balance is powerful because it creates a nation that is respected and feared at the same time. The truth is that sovereignty, once tasted, cannot be surrendered. India has reached that point. It has realized its strength, its potential, its ability to shape its own destiny. There is no going back to the days of dependency. There is no return to the era of silence. India is speaking loudly now, and the world must listen. This is why the assertion of sovereignty is not just a phase, it is the permanent state of a nation that has woken up to its power. Unapologetic, confident, unshakable, these are not just words, they are the very essence of India's presence today. They are the qualities that make the world take notice. They are the characteristics that turn respect into fear. Because the truth is simple, a sovereign India cannot be controlled, and a sovereign India will shape the future of the world on its own terms.